You know, in the history of politics in northern New Brunswick, a lot of people forget that the Progressive Conservative Party had a lot of strength in the 50s and 60s and into the 1970s. The big family, of course, was the Fernand Dubé family, where Fernand, who was a lieutenant for Richard Hatfield in his glory years, his sons were very strong in politics, and Jean, the main one, was an MP and an MLA back-to-back in the Campbellton region. But for me as a journalist, when I started my career, I didn't get the glory part of the Charlie Van Horne era. Charlie Van Horne probably made Brian Mulrooney look like, I don't know, a tea party. An embracer of confrontation, patronage, machinations, glad-handing, ego, direct attack politics. Charlie Van Horne had it all. You know you got to be good when you're not dead and you have a bridge named after you, and that bridge connects Campbellton and Listigouche, Quebec, or Gaspé, Quebec, and has helped commerce for many, many years, and came up in controversy recently with the pandemic explosion across the world, where the Campbellton Bridge became the focus of our relationship with our good people over in Quebec and Listigouche, Maria, Pointe-la-Croix, all those areas. Now, Joseph Charles Van Horne, born January 3rd, 1921, came to the highest prominence when he led the Conservative Party of New Brunswick between 1966 and 1967. Now, he was born in the St. Quentin-Kedgwick region. He had been a lawyer and hotel owner in the Campbellton area, and he ran for the PCs in a riding of Restigouche-Madawaska in the 1955 by-election following the death of longtime Liberal Member of Parliament Joseph Boucher. Now, Van Horne, who ran a very, very strong campaign, not as directly dramatic as the election campaign against Louis Robichaud in the mid-60s, he won the vote, bringing a PC back to the region after 22 years of the Liberals. Now, while in Parliament, he successfully lobbied the federal and provincial governments to build a bridge between Campbellton and Pointe-la-Croix, Quebec, or Cross Point. Now, the bridge opened in 1962 and was later named for him. What was ironic about this, he basically used every machinations he could to show excessive traffic on the secondary bridge, or the secondary connector, showing that Campbellton and Pointe-la-Croix really needed it. And he was right in the long term, because that's been a link of commerce. Obviously not as important as the bridges in St. John and Miramichi in different places, but it showed that there could be two economies that could help both, Gaspé and Campbellton, and open up a lot of trade, a lot of cultural and sporting connections. Now, in 1966, this is where it became kind of dramatic. After resignation of Cy Sherwood, Van Horne, in a very, very legendary campaign, successfully ran for leader of the PC party of New Brunswick. Now, when the election was eventually called, his campaign against Liberal Premier Louis Robichaud in the 67 provincial election is considered probably one of the most flamboyant and extravagant in New Brunswick history. We don't know how much that Charlie may have spent on his own campaign or money that was not his, but we think it's got to be literally in the high 6 to low 7 figures. Now, he crossed the province in a Cadillac, wearing a cowboy hat, and with the great Don Messer providing entertainment at each designated stop. Now, Van Horne had some really heavy politics during the election, because he frequently attacked Robichaud's mixed Acadian and First Nations heritage, saying those half-breeds shouldn't drink liquor. Now, critics also accused Van Horne for being too vague on his promises, and there was also rumors that the Irvings, were bankrolling his campaign to get Robichaud out of there. Now, Robichaud was eventually re-elected, and Van Horne, in his own disgrace, as he said, resigned as leader. He attempted to regain the leadership at the 69 convention, but lost to Richard Hatfield, who eventually was Premier of New Brunswick for 17 years. Now, Charlie Van Horne wasn't Acadian. I think Charlie Van Horne's background was more Madawaska or Edmonton. But the thing is, he used to use every technique possible to get what he wanted or wanted done. Now, he did remain in the Legislative Assembly and served as Minister of Tourism in the cabinet of Richard Hatfield between 70 and 72, but he was eventually fired for eventually going over budget. Now, the drama of Louis Robichaud didn't stop there, because in 1975 he left politics entirely after pleading guilty to accepting a bribe over the purchase of parklands, and received, instead of a jail term, which could have easily happened, a 2-year suspended sentence. Now, about the Charlie Van Horne campaign in the election, there has been some publications throughout the years that talk about how Van Horne went overboard to try to defeat Robichaud, because Robichaud was so popular because he knocked off the what he called the Anglo dictator of New Brunswick, Hugh John Fleming. But the fact is, Charlie Van Horne was always looking for his best interests and that of his region, and he felt that he, as premier, could give the best to New Brunswick, where Robichaud was doing the best just for, his specific, patronage regions of New Brunswick. Now, the thing is about the mixed-blooded Acadians that Robichaud and I are. Well, I call him Acadian Métis. Some people don't believe in it, but he created a lot of controversy, because when you have one francophone or a person out of big francophone roots attacking another francophone in New Brunswick, it basically didn't make any sense, because usually most Acadians, we don't fight amongst ourselves unless there's a bigger thing going, like federally. Caston Gay and Fernand Saint-Jean, when he fought for the MP leadership. Now, how did this tie in to my career as a journalist? Charlie Van Horne almost got me fired. This is the quick story that I tell quite a bit, and if you haven't heard it before, don't let me know, because you probably haven't, because my podcast people don't really know too much about my background. I get a call from Jean, because he's basically doing well as a PC member up home. And he said, "Listen, Jeffrey," he said, "are you busy?" Well, I said, "What do you mean?" Well, he said, "I got a photo that I'm going to take with Charlie Van Horne. Do you want to run it?" I said, "Sure." So he comes in with this beautiful photo of he and Charlie Van Horne shaking hands outside the bridge, and Charlie's looking great. So I said, "Yeah, well, okay, what's the story?" Well, talking about, Charlie and the campaign and coming back to Campbellton. So we do a little story. When the paper comes out, someone calls up the paper, and he said, "Whoever that journalist is, I want them fired." He didn't say their name. He said, "What do you mean?" Well, he said, "Charlie Van Horne's dead, so whoever he took the photo with, that's not Charlie Van Horne, because I know for sure he's dead." And my boss said, "Charlie Van Horne's not dead. He was walking the streets of Campbellton the other day by his bridge." And the guy said, "Well, that's your story. I know for a fact that your reporter makes up stories and gets other people to take pictures for them." And my boss basically told him, he said, most times when he comes in, he's either in the dark room on a computer, so where does he have the time to make up stories? Because when it ran, literally, ladies and gentlemen, 70% of the people who saw the photo thought either was manipulated, which ties into the time Norman Schwarzkopf came to Charlotte after the Gulf War and posed with Charlemagne Jacques Allard, and he claimed when we ran the story, and I did the story, that we faked the shot. They were saying basically the photos are manipulated. At any time when Charlie was involved with the media publicity, he was there. Now, what would be New Brunswick like if Charlie Van Horne would have been premier? Well, you know what Donald Trump is like now in the States? Well, it would have been more interesting. It'd be like a Donald Trump type of ego, but he would never be as bad as Donald Trump or racist or whatever. Charlie Van Horne was what you call a fighter fisherman type politician. He knew the game, he knew how to play it, and all his success, he was the number 2 guy for the PCs in New Brunswick for years, and when Fernand became Hatfield's lieutenant, he was more of a softer, quieter version of the different aggressive PCs that came up in Northern New Brunswick back in the 60s and 70s. But Charlie Van Horne's legacy is this: they don't name something after you and keep it there unless you made a difference. Sure, he had his issues, sure, he had his problems, but for me, Charlie Van Horne was the battler that the North Shore needed. And the other people that came afterwards, although were the quieter versions. You look at the Alan Mars, you look at the Dennis Furlongs, the Carol St. Croix, the Rayburn the Al Gerards, the Guy Arsenault, the Rayburn Doucets. Those people took up the legacy of Charlie fighting for the North and made it in their own style. But back then, the 60s and 70s, it was the Silk Castle elections. You were driven to the voting booth, you were driven to the liquor store, you were driven for groceries, you were giving $20. We don't know how much money that Charlie Van Horne spent personally on his campaign. It could be in the millions of dollars. I can't even keep track because most of the journalists that used to cover Charlie are either dead, dying, or can't be tracked down because they're all in Florida. But all I know, Charlie Van Horne, when he was alive, just like any other legend, there were sightings. And what's completely bizarre, ladies and gentlemen, he died one day after my birthday in 2003. 2003 was the Canada Winter Games legacy last year and a few months earlier. When Charlie Van Horne probably heard about the Canada Games coming to Campbellton, he said probably, you see, another thing I kind of did for my region. Because Charlie Van Horne was the North Shore for a lot of us. And love him or hate him, he was ours. He wasn't no Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he's ours. He was the politician that broke ground with so many campaigns. You got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the Robichaud money that invested in Northern Brunswick started when Trudeau came in. It wasn't really fully fulfilled when Charlie fought before the 67 election. And maybe would have won, the money would never came in. Can you see Charlie Van Horne working with Pierre Trudeau, the Liberals? Of course not. He was conservative through and through. Anyway. So listen, thanks for listening. And if you have any stories about Charlie Van Horne or comments, please leave it below. And I can only speak of the fact that people trying to fire me because they were basically telling me Charlie Van Horne was dead and I was being suckered or trying to sucker the people. So one article, and I had like 4 or 5 people totally freak out, even though I'm not even from Campbellton. I'm from the Lawrence Jack River area, and maybe you noticed that. Anyway, honk if you like Charlie, as we like to say.